Alright, because I'm new to this, and so are you, I want to clarify some things before we actually get to having fun. Don't worry, you still get to hear me ramble, but I've decided to move away from making cringy videos about games, because they're boring. There's a million of them, and the only reason I started doing it is out of spite. After that, they'll work, and I didn't get much from them. So now, like the short attention span teenage everyone in my generation has become, I've moved on to something new. Do not worry, I'm keeping my previous videos, or at least the ones with bearable levels of cringe, but I've decided instead to start doing cringy videos on films instead. If that's what you want to call it. Yeah, film analysis, yeah, if that's what you want to call it. But let me be frank with you, I'm not making this for anyone else, except me, maybe some friends, entertainment. If anyone else stumbles across this, that's cool too. So this is going to be a lot of nonsensical ramblings, probably because my thoughts are poorly articulated, and my thoughts are poor in general. But I've noticed that whenever I finish a movie, gotta get a lot of thoughts, but no one to share them with. So I created an imaginary audience to fix this problem. So strap in and prepare for some of the worst movie takes you've ever seen. Let us analyze a film literally called Abraham Lincoln's Vampire Hunter. To give you an idea of what the movie's about, Abe Lincoln's mom, is attacked by a vampire. So that gives little Abe a thirst for vengeance that one day gets answered by your very typical mentor character, who teaches Lincoln to kill vampires. He's such a basic mentor character. He doesn't get a real name from me. He's the mentor from now on. The rest of the movie is about Abe's rise to political power, and his vampire killing adventures. That's all, because I'm keeping it brief, because at least half of the view count was watching this movie with me. Gabe. Another thing, I only watched the movie once, so that was a while ago, and I'm not watching that stuff again. So most of this I would say is going to be purely based off of those. But first off, let's mention the most tragic part about this movie. Despite frequent hand-to-hand combat scenes, the movie does not once utilize the fact that Abraham Lincoln himself was a wrestling lord, so much that he was recognized by the Wrestling Hall of Fame. Unforgivable, really. The movie gets to the plot very quickly, though. That's to be admired, but this is at the cost of not really getting to know much about his early life. Whether this trade between, quick start and not much early life is worth it, it's kind of personal opinion. If there's a better way to write it, I don't know. I'm not talented to know that, or to know how else I would do it. What really gets this movie going is the mentor character, though. The first time we see him is when he saves Abe's life in a very convenient last-second save. This is the driving force for the rest of the plot to happen, and I don't know how to describe it, but this character just feels out of place. It seems as if the writers didn't want to have him in the plot, but couldn't figure out how to turn Abe into a vampire-killing machine without him. This can't be true, though, because if they want to forget him, they wouldn't be trying to do something with him every 2 seconds, only for the film to get bored of him, though. Always trying to do something with him. Until they need to pick him back up for plot convenience, of course. It seems like they're just gonna do something with him, but they never do. Like, for example, Abe, when he gets into a relationship with Mary Todd, it seems like it's gonna generate a large source of conflict between the two characters, as the mentor established that vampire hunters cannot have relationships with others. That was a no-no. But he just kind of seems to forget. He's like, oh, okay. And it's never mentioned again. The plot tries to bring him back to reveal that he is secretly a vampire to Abe. And I'll admit, I was a little confused by this reveal for a second, because I'd kind of assumed the entire film Abe already knew this since the beginning, because in the beginning, when he saves Abe from that vampire that killed Nancy Lincoln, he kind of slightly throws the vampire straight into the air through 3 stories of building. I guess Abe just really believed in the power of truth or something. I don't know, man. But it would seem both these guys have trouble with vampires killing their family members, though, which is apparently Lincoln's only motivation. He wants to kill the vampire that killed his mom, or really any vampire, which always felt off because he never seems vengeful, maybe brooding, But this vampire is killed off halfway through the movie, which is not the choice I would have made. But regardless, all this has the effect of making Lincoln seem like he's just there to do whatever the story takes him. Not much of a character of his own till later. Until then, Abraham Lincoln himself is just some generic action movie protagonist. Also, this is a small complaint, but there's some exposition from the mentor at the very start. Could have been a little less clunky, dispersed differently. Very minor, though. It's shown a pretty neat slideshow. Only mentioned it because it was in my notes. Also, it might just be me, but Abe feels brooding early on, like he's Batman or something. And speaking of Abraham, let's look into his supposed nemesis that I mentioned earlier, the vampire that killed his mom. I thought he was either going to be what introduced Abe to the vampire world, and have that be it, or do that, and then become a rival or his prey for the entire movie, instead of having Abe kill him at first. Instead, Abe kills him halfway through the movie, which is made up to be a big deal. Now, me, personally, I would have had him wear down the mentor character over time, because he's always like, let me get a crack at him, let me try to kill this guy. So the mentor finally, he's like, gives up. He's like, okay, Abe, go ahead. He's like, but you're gonna mess up, he's not ready. But unfortunately, everything can't be made exactly how I want it, even though I'm objectively right about everything. So anyway, as a result of this vampire's death, he alludes to the new, cooler main villains. At first, I thought that was the only reason they killed him off, but it was really to clear Abraham's motivational slate so they could get into politics and become president. I think I should mention that this time, multiple things have happened to Abe. Like, he meets Mary Todd, his childhood friend, and some other stuff, but you wouldn't know it because the passage of time is not done very well, in my opinion. Because events feel closer together than I'm guessing is intended. This makes it feel like everything is being rushed, and has the effect of making you feel like you're just now getting, like you're halfway through the movie and you're just now getting started with the film. But you always feel like you're just getting started with the film. That was weird. But anyway, the biggest of these things, that is going on is this marriage. But as I said earlier, for a film that makes such a big deal about vampires being loners, nothing really happens that's bad when he breaks the rules. So I don't know why they were mentioned in the for that, because when he breaks the rules, yeah, I don't know why they were mentioned in the first place. There's not really, you think it'd be foreshadowing, right? But nothing really happens. I think it's just an overlooked aspect of the film. But don't despair, though, dear viewer. Did I really write that? Okay. But because while all these storylines with these characters may seem random or portrayed strangely, the movie refuses to let them go. Every character Abe meets, even ones as strange and as minor as his boss for the store that he temporarily worked in, has a deep part in the main story. For example, that his best friend, I don't know the name of the character, it's played by Anthony Mackie, so I just call him Anthony Mackie. Well, he gets kidnapped like twice, so at least maybe it might have been like 3 times, I think. But anyway, Abe has to save the dude. But it just makes him seem like a very classic damsel in distress for the whole movie. But if you haven't guessed by now, this is a pretty tropey movie. Anyway, he is also in the finale, which made no sense. That main character, not the main character, the friend character, I don't know why he was there. That didn't make much sense. But the same goes for the mentor, who also randomly appears in the finale, and random parts throughout the movie as well, for seemingly no reason other than to save Abe again at the very end. Then there's that boss dude I mentioned earlier. The role he plays, the clerk guy at the store. Well, anyway, he seems like he's a spy for the Confederate vampires, but in a sudden twist at the end, he was a double agent and was working with Lincoln all along. Now, I'll admit, I really like this twist. I thought there was plenty of foreshadowing for his betrayal and not his real loyalties to Lincoln. I didn't think the movie would get that fancy with it. I thought that was a pretty cool part. Um, that said, the reason I mention this as an example of the movie not letting go of characters is because the reason I complain is that it's so out of place and odd that the vampire generals he's supposed to be joining would even know who that guy is. Because the dude was very ordinary. He's just some dude. These characters all being the only allies to Abe. A little strange considering that there is a significant time jump. Uh, but it's a good way through the movie, and I was sure there's going to be a time skip. Like after Abe moves to Springfield, the town he moves into a town. After he meets the mentor character to kill vampires. But the movie takes a little too much time focusing on his vampire killing adventures. Not enough to overstay its welcome, but maybe, in my personal opinion, a little too long. But anyways, this time skip comes pretty late, which is a shame because it could have fixed the movie's pacing problem in regards to relationships, and I think it would have focused on the much more interesting part of the movie, which I have to get into. So after the time skip is when this movie gets good. It focuses on Abe in politics and the vampires joining the Confederates. This prompts Lincoln to get back into his way of killing vampires, and I gotta say, I was skeptical if that they could get Abe Lincoln back into the vampire world once he totally abandoned it for politics, since his primary motives of revenge. But they did it very well. I'll just say that. This plotline of him killing Confederate vampires is what I signed up for. I was in the movie description, and it's hard to describe it something other than purely entertaining and fun to watch. Again, making me wish the time skip was earlier, so we could have had this, because other than taking down the real Big Bad, he doesn't do much else in the stage of the film. It was obvious from the beginning that the movie required a time jump. Like, I always expected a time jump, but or a time skip. I don't know. Is there a difference between a time skip and a time jump? I think one's longer than the other. Anyway, it's been too long since I talked about the mentor character again. Yeah. So let's get back to him. Just for some small notes, the film tells us that Abe hates his mentor for being a vampire. Like, I think they actually used the word hate, and keeping that a secret from him. But I don't know. I never really got that impression. Because outside of them directly telling you, I don't know, they just don't act that different. Not to mention, I am convinced the only reason they bring back the mentor character on the train is to save him at the finale. Because every other character is there. So, why not? Why not throw him in there for kicks and giggles? But now, just a small gripe about Abe himself. For a president whose whole thing is honesty, he's kind of a secretive little guy sometimes. But anyway, all that said, I gotta admit, the way the dialogue was written was really interesting to listen to. Just the way they talk, the conversation always felt like I was hearing two developed and distinct characters interacting with each other in an engaging way. Also, while the film doesn't sound like it would take itself seriously, it's literally called Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. It's not the comedy that you think it would be. It does not make much, it doesn't seem like it makes too much self-aware or purely just ridiculous humor. You think that'd be everywhere in this kind of movie, but it's not. Except in the action scenes. In the action scenes, physics are thrown out the window, and cool choreography and that 2012 CGI is thrown in instead. But, overall, I get to see Abraham Lincoln twirling an axe. Like, that's crazy. So, I'm going to give it a reasonable 7.5 out of 10. Alright, thanks. Thanks for hearing my ramblings about Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter.